Hello and welcome to another episode of People Powered Solutions Podcast. Today we welcome Dave Albin. Dave was born in 1954 at Queen of Angels Hospital in Hollywood, California to a single mother. He was adopted by his aunt and uncle on his mother's side at the age of 5. His adoptive parents told Dave they were not his parents at the age of 11. Later that year, both his adoptive parents started drinking. This is where Dave's life took a hard turn. Dave tried alcohol at the age of 12. By the time he was 14, he was experimenting with hard drugs. Grossly addicted to drugs and alcohol, he joined AA some 20 years later in June 1988. This is when Dave was introduced to the personal development industry. He attended a seminar by Tony Robbins in 1995 where he did his first firewalk. Dave went on to work for Tony Robbins for just shy of 20 years as Tony's Firewalk captain. Dave retired from the Anthony Robbins companies in 2014, shortly after Google hired him to put on an event for them. Firewalk Productions LLC was born in 2014. Dave has done gigs for NASA, Heineken, the Entrepreneurs Organization, Remax, Chick-fil-A, Prove It, Google, NC, Chiropractic Association, Wayne Dyer, T. Harv Eker, Chris Video, Tony Robbins, and many, many more. Dave currently lives in the Appalachian Mountains in Ashe County, North Carolina. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Lori.
How would you tell us a bit more about what it is you do? What is this business, Firewalk Adventures?
Well, Firewalk Adventures came into be right shortly after Google called me to come do an event for them, right? So I got sober back, as you read there, back in June of 1988. And about the same time that I was getting sober, I had insomnia. And so I was up late one night, and there he was, right? The man himself, young Tony Robbins, Gunthy Ranker, selling his personal power program. And he really got me with a couple things. One was he said, we'll do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. And I remember thinking, whoa, okay, he must be talking to me because that's why I drink and drug, to try to avoid pain or gain pleasure. So that really spoke to me. And then he said, the reason or how we make decisions is it's made out of inspiration or desperation. And I remember saying, well, I'm pretty desperate, so maybe I had to buy this program. And I did. And he sent it to me. And to date this, Lori, it came on little white things called cassette tapes.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm of that generation.
Yeah, right. So I went through the program. I did what the man taught me to do, and it worked. So what was happening is that there I'm in AA, and I'm working the 12 steps, and that's putting my life back together. It's allowing me to make amends with the people that I had harmed. It's showing me my character defects, my shortcomings, and it's also putting me into the maintenance steps, meaning that we continue to stay sober one day at a time and then help the next alcoholic who comes through the door. So we're maintaining also our spiritual connection with all that. Mm-hmm. Well, so here comes Tony Robbins, AA. It was the perfect combination for me.
Yeah.
And so it's where it grew. It came from that. And then, I'm up late one night, right? The infomercial, boom. 7 years later, I'm sorry. A friend called me on the phone and said, hey, Tony's coming to town. Let's go. You got me into this. And I said, okay, yeah, sure. Let's do it. And so I went to my first live event with Tony Robbins, and that's where we did a firewalk in 1995. Now, when I found out we were going to do a firewalk, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And what's interesting about that, Lori, I didn't even know what a firewalk was. I mean, I just didn't. But it didn't sound like anything I wanted to do.
It doesn't sound like something that inspires fun.
No, you wouldn't think that, right? Because we just don't know anything about it, right? And that's really where it comes from. But heck, firewalking's been around 1,000 years. Culturally, oh my gosh. The Phoenicians, the people of India, the Indo-Europeans, the Polynesians, the Hawaiians, the Native American Indians. I mean, it's been around a long time and been used for a lot of different reasons. First and foremost, it's a rite of passage. It's very ceremonious, a very spiritual connection. Well, Tony learned about it many years ago. And so he decided he was going to bring it into his seminars and use it on day one of a 4-day event. And he knew that if he could get you across that fire, that it would change your life forever. And, Tone's pretty dialed in. As far as human behavior goes, I don't know that there's too many out there that would give him much more than a run for his money, considering, what he, as far as like coaching and life coaching and professional athletes and Olympians and entertainers and, all of them, they all come to him for advice when things are not going well or breaking down. So again, the Firewalk, and I will tell you, when I did it that night, it was one of the most transformational moments I had ever experienced. Bar none, it's crazy. I'm in there with 3,500 people. You're in a room with Tony for 10 hours. He gets you ready for the Firewalk. When it's time to go, he's like, take your shoes off. And I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go. I don't think so, pal. I'm not falling for that one. But then I was like, but wait a minute. I'm watching everybody else and they're all taking their shoes off. And I'm like, well, if I don't, then they're going to know I'm a coward. So just take your shoes off and fake it. Well, I got out there, and when he's got everybody going out there, 3,500 people, if you can imagine, he's got them chanting. They're all going, yes, yes. And I'm walking out there going, no, I'm sorry, we're not doing this. And then to make things matters worse, he's got African drummers, right? So you're out there and all of a sudden it's dun, 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 dun. And it's, Lori, it's unlike anything you could ever imagine. It is really super, super intense. So I go hide out in the back. I'm like, I'll just hide in the back. Nobody's going to know. Well, Tony knows where all the cowards are. So what does he do? He wants to make sure he gets you through this experience. So what he does is he trains people to go get you, right? So I'm back there, and all of a sudden here comes this guy out of nowhere. And all of a sudden he locks eyes with me. And he's coming at me, and he won't take his eyes off me. So I'm guessing Tony trains people, once you make eye contact, don't take your eyes off of them, right? Guy gets probably 20 feet from me, and he kind of leans into me and he looks at me really like a puzzled look on his face, and he says, "Are you okay?" Well, when we're not okay, what do we say?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, good. Oh yeah, all good here, pal. See you later. Get away from me, right? And so he goes, well, good, great, glad to hear that. He says, so are you going to walk tonight? And I'm like, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. I'm not walking tonight. And he goes, because I was kind of like, my tonality wasn't really good with the guy. And so he's like, well, that's cool. He goes, it's okay. We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. And I go, okay, I like this guy. He's going to get me out of here. Well, then here's a stranger. I don't know who this guy is, Lori, to this day. I don't. I wish I did, because I wouldn't be here on your show if it wasn't. But he asked me a question that changed my life forever. One question, one stranger. And the question was this: wouldn't you at least like to watch? And I thought, sure. Yeah, let's do that. Let's watch these people burn their feet off. This should be entertaining.
It makes for some good entertainment.
Right? It's pretty cheap. Cost me $700 for the ticket in 1995, which is what, $7,000 today?
I was going to say $7,000 easy.
So he said, well, and I got 3,500 people in front of me. And let me set the stage so you know visually what's going on. I'm in a big parking lot, 3,500 people, right? Over here in the corner, they build a giant fire. And they build this pit, and it's probably 30 feet wide, 60, 70 feet long. And they burn on it all day, 10 hours. And they keep stacking wood on it, and it just burns down, and it renders. And so once it renders, then they load those coals in a wheelbarrow. Then they take a wheelbarrow and they pull it in between two lanes of sod, of grass, which is about, 3 feet wide, 18 feet long. And then they take a flathead shovel and they sprinkle those coals on top of that grass. And that's what you physically walk on. Well, I'm at the back. I don't know any of this. I don't see any of this. All I got is 3,500 people in front of me. So he says, well, look, you're not going to be able to see anything from here. I'm 100 yards away. He said, just get in line and eventually you'll get up to where you can see it. Right? So, and in his defense, he's telling the truth. He's not lying. So I get in line and I'm kind of walking along and, it's midnight. It's a beautiful summer night. Stars are out. It's beautiful. And all of a sudden I'm walking along, and all of a sudden this guy comes up to me and he whispers in my ear. And he says, he knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. And then pew, he just like disappeared into the night. And I'm like, what was that? And so now I'm kind of walking along, can't see anything. And all of a sudden I get to a point where I can't see in front of me, but I can see at an angle. And Lori, they're doing it. Every race and creed and color is now firewalking. And my brain, I've got no references to this. I've never seen anything like this in my life. And I'm like, why are they doing this? Metaphorically, what's this for? I don't get it. And I'm kind of watching, and now I'm just in a trance. I'm mesmerized because every race, creed, and color, age, everybody is firewalking, and I have no clue why. And I'm just staring at them. And I'm in a trance. And I'm looking and I'm staring. All of a sudden, boom, guess where I am? I'm at the front of the line. Well, so now I'm staring into the abyss. That lane that they sprinkled the coals on is glowing bright red. And again, it's 15, 18 feet long. And there's a wheelbarrow right next to it. And you can feel the heat coming off. My heart's pounding out of my chest. I'm staring at this abyss. I am scared to death. And there's a trainer standing there. And all of a sudden the trainer goes, eyes up. And I pulled my eyes up and it dawned on me. I was in a room for 10 hours with Tony Robbins, and guess what he teaches you to do? Keep your eyes up. Don't stare at what you fear. Look to the celebration, and that's where the sweet spot is. So now my eyes are up, and this trainer goes, squeeze your fist and say yes. And I went, yes. And he went, stronger. And I went, yes. Well, he could tell I wasn't in a peak state. I wasn't playing full out at that moment. So he screamed at me. And he said, stronger. And so I threw my hands in the air and I screamed as loud as I could. And he goes, go, go, go. Boom. I took off. Well, at the end of the lane, Tony puts two people and they lock arms and they catch you. And they were like, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. I mean, if they hadn't stopped me, I'd have walked all the way to Albuquerque at that point. I was just in a complete trance. I had no idea. And so it's like, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. And so I'm wiping my feet and I'm kind of celebrating. And all of a sudden I realize I burnt myself really, really bad, super bad. And I lift up my foot and I look at my right foot and it's dirty, but there's no burns. Oh, it's my other foot. I look it up. It's filthy dirty, but there's no burns. And now I'm looking back and the coals are bright red and I'm going, what just happened? How did I do that? How did I walk on coals that are 1,000 degrees and not burn myself? And I had no explanation. I mean, have you ever done something really awesome, really cool, and then you realize you don't know how you did it, but you're still like, that's me. I did it.
You're taking
credit for it. So, and here's what I learned about firewalking. The first thing I learned was when I took that first step, I took the second, third, fourth, and fifth. I'll guarantee you, right? Because you're not going to stop in the middle of the lane. So kind of metaphorically, it's like life.
Yeah.
When we want to do something, right? What do? We got to take the first step. We have to step through the fear. And so that's where it kind of shifted for me that night. Because again, it was one of the most exhilarating things I'd ever done in my entire life. I felt like Superman. I felt like I could do anything. And guess what? So did 3,500 other people. So our self-worth and our vibration just raised up really, really high. And Tony knows that. That's why he uses it. Because if he can get you to walk on fire, then he asks you the question. You just walked on fire last night. Coals were 1,000 degrees. You didn't burn yourself. So what else can you do? And that's how he gets the leverage. And here's where it got really interesting for me, was the next day. So now I'm coming into day two, right? This is a 4-day event. Day one, that night,
I believe they do the firewalk on day one. I understand the how, the why, maybe now, but wow. Okay, so you're coming back for day two after having walked on cold.
So you come in, you're standing in the foyer, 3,500 people. And to this day, I've never experienced anything like it in my life. People were laughing, they were crying, they were hugging, they were talking, they were communicating humanistically at a level unlike anything I'd ever seen or witnessed in my life. And to this day, I don't know that there's anything out there. I'm sure there probably is, but I've never seen it. And so that next day, man, you are playing full out. You are motivated. You're inspired. You're encouraged. You are firing on all 8 cylinders. And that's when Tony's got you. And that's why he's so good at what he does, because that next day is phenomenal. So that's when I fell in love with it. Well, I found out that Tony uses about 300 volunteers for every event. About 250 of them are inside and another 50 or 60 are outside all day on the fire building team. So I got to know one of Tony's trainers at the event, and he was talking to me, and I said, man, this is really cool. I'd like to come be part of this. He said, that's great. We'd love to have you. When you get home, call Robbins Research. They'll send you an application, and then you fill it out, send it back. And if you're lucky enough and they like what they hear from you, you can come back and be a volunteer. Well, I did that immediately when I got home, and sure enough, filled it out, sent it back. A couple of weeks later, got a letter in the mail that said, congratulations, Dave Albin, you've been selected to crew with the Anthony Robbins organization in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Well, when you fill out this 4-page application, you fill in kind of like a lot of things of what you know and what you don't know. Like, I was on a farm, so I knew how to split wood. I knew how to use tools. I knew how to run equipment. And I had a military background. I had a security background. So they looked at, evaluated all that so they know what team to put you on. So they put me on the fire building team, which is what I wanted to do anyway. And then they also put me on the security team to help take care of Tony's celebrities. And so I crewed on a volunteer basis, I think probably 5 or 6 times. And then they offered me a subcontracting position. They put me on the security team to help take care of, again, Tony's celebs. And then they also put me on the fire building team as the assistant captain. So that was all happening between 95 and 96. 2003 comes along. Tony offers me the captain's position. He's like, Dave, I want you to take over all of my firewalks globally. And I first said no because I homeschooled. And he immediately said, well, what if we pay to have your family travel with us on the road? Would that make a difference? Well, yeah. You think?
Yeah.
Back when I called home after being offered that, I talked to my son, and my son's like, you think, Dad, you want to do that? Yeah. You think, Dad? Where's our first event? He said. He's 9 years old, by the way, right? And I said, well, it's Sydney, Australia. And so that was life-changing for me, Lori, obviously. So now I'm on the road full-time, Tony Robbins, all the exposure to all the proximity to all these people. And it's, my job, my responsibility to facilitate all those gigs. And so 2005 comes along, we go to London, we set a world record. We firewalk 12,300 people, which I call it a world record. I want to disclose Guinness was not there. However, to my knowledge, no one has ever come anywhere close, other than maybe a Tony Robbins seminar, firewalking that kind of, a number that high, 12,300 people. It is crazy. I get asked all the time, it's like, well, how long did it take you, like 2 days to do that? No, it took an hour and 8 minutes. Right now, understand, we had 37 lanes. And so, and when you're walking, Lori, you're walking, they're not lollygagging here, they're
not
moving.
Stopping midway. No,
yeah, nobody stops midway and looks around, doesn't happen. And then my life changed again in 2014. I'm driving down the road, my phone rings, and it's Google. And they're like, are you the Dave Albin that does the firewalks for Tony Robbins? Yeah. Why? Well, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you. We just want to ask you first, are you under any contractual obligation or non-compete? No, I'm a free agent. Homeboy can do whatever he wants. So they actually hired me, and we ended up doing a glass walk. Firewalking isn't always logistically possible because I only do the firewalks at night for safety purposes. And they wanted to do this event. They had 148 executives that were graduating from a pretty intense program that they had gone through. And so they wanted to do a lunch. They wanted to have cocktails afterwards. So they brought me in to do the glass walk. We did the glass walk. We had lunch, and then they had some beers afterwards. And then we went back the following year. Well, that's when as I said, that's when the light bulb went off. I actually got to talking with a couple of Google executives, and they said, do you know what you've got? I'm like, what does that mean? They said, you're the guy. There's nothing out there that creates a corporate team building experience like this. This is life-changing. This is paradigm shift stuff. And you're at the top of the mountain here. So we're not trying to tell you what to do. I mean, we know you work for Tony, but you may want to consider starting your own business. And that's all it took for me. If Google's telling me that there's a marketplace for this, maybe I should listen. And so, yeah. So Firewalk Productions was born. So I had to go back to Tony and say, hey, at my last event with him, I said, hey, I need to talk to you after the event. He kind of looked at me. And so we went in the green room after he was done, and he says, you're leaving, aren't you? Yeah, Tone, I've been with you for almost 20 years, brother. And I'm going to go do this on my own now. And your team is trained. You don't need me. You've got a half a dozen people in your organization right there that can do my job. So they've all been cross-trained. You're in good shape. He's like, are you sure? Like, yeah, Tony, I'm sure.
Yes.
And so it worked really well. So that, next thing I know, I'm at NASA, Notre Dame, Chick-fil-A, Remax, Microsoft, Heineken, BEO organization, all of those things that you read, and they were all coming organically.
That's amazing. Without even having to market or develop. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Dave, talk to me a bit about, what are some of the things that go through your mind? So I'm backtracking a bit, but when you're walking through those coals, right? As you're walking, because you mentioned at the beginning that you weren't really sure why people did this, what was it about? How you were supposed to do it? So talk about a bit of that mental game that happens and what's happening in your mind as you're walking across those coals.
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that is that, what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't become a Navy SEAL by sitting on the bench. It's not the way it works, right? So everybody, every corporation, every CEO has the daunting task of keeping people inspired and motivated. How do you do that? You don't put a speaker on stage and just let them talk. You don't take them out and have them go golfing, at a corporate team building. You can do a lot of things, but if you don't do something to shake up their central nervous system, it's not going to create change. So again, the fears we don't overcome become our limits. And firewalking crushes that, just crushes it. And again, if you go back and study firewalking, it's been used as a rite of passage. It's a very spiritual thing throughout the ages. Tony just turned it into a motivational moment because he knew that if he can get him to walk across those coals, he's got him. And so that's really what it comes from. But, fight or flight, because when you walk up to those coals and you look down and they're glowing bright red, it's an eye-opening moment. And so what you have to do is you have to teach the people how to step through that fear. You got to put themselves in a peak state. There's a great video out there, and your audience wants to go take a peek at it. It really does a great job. It's Oprah walked in 2010 with us, and Harpo got it on video, and it's on YouTube, and you can go watch it, and it depicts exactly what somebody's going through. She's walking around knowing she's going to firewalk, and she's losing her what. She's all over the place. She's scared to death. I was too. Most people are, right? Because we're mammals. We're trained to run from fire, not walk up to it and step across it. And so if you watch her really closely, Tony gets her in a good state. And he basically says to her at one point, he says, come on, Oprah. What's the worst that can happen? Burn your feet off and die? Come on. I'm not going to let you get hurt. And so that's all it took. She needed a little bit of encouragement, which I say all the time. Sometimes that's all people need. Just a little bit of encouragement. And they got to trust the process. And she did. And so she walks. She celebrated like a 5-year-old. I mean, she went nuts. She's jumping up and down and having a good time. And and then she gets away from the firewalk area. And she walks over and they start to interview. And they interview her right on the spot. Well, here's the beauty. She made one of the most important business decisions of her life within a minute of firewalking. And if you can hear it, because she says, this is the next chapter, people. And that's where she created the next chapter. Well, that's pretty regular. That happens a lot.
Wow.
Because you don't experience anything like that. You can jump out of a plane. Okay, I've done that. Hey, you can go surfing. Yeah, I've done that. I've gone skiing. I've done, zip lines and bungee jumping, and I've done all kinds of stuff like that. But nothing is like firewalking. It's just absolutely magical. And people ask me all the time, Dave, so how can they do it? What's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I don't have a clue. Scientifically, I don't have the answer for it. I don't. Here's what I do know. Between Tony and I, we've walked close to 500,000 people. And I've seen hundreds of thousands of people change their life change right on the spot, right? Because I can see them. Because when I was with Tony, I was the shoveler. I manned that wheelbarrow, right? So I would shovel his lane and his lead trainer's other lane. So I can see the look on their face. They're scared to death. All kinds of apprehension on their face, and then they walk, and then you see them after, and they're exhilarated. They're jumping up and down like kids. So it happens immediately. You don't have to wait for the change, is the beauty. So that's what
pretty incredible and pretty powerful that it happens like instantly at the end. One of the things you did mention, people were hugging and you'd never experienced anything like just that true level of connection. And I think 100% of it is the result of this collective experience that they've all just went through, right?
It's almost like a near-death experience, Lori. That's what I call it. It's
but they
not
all
quite
had that same experience, which is what really fueled that connection amongst themselves, right?
Yeah, we're all there the next morning going, whoa, we kicked ass last night.
Oh, yeah.
Look at what we did, right? So we all experienced the same level of vibrational, uplifting. And again, your self-worth, your self-confidence, your self-belief, it all went up together with all of it. So collectively, it's like, hey, look at us, man, look who we are, right? So yeah, it's magical. And it works every time. It's not like, oh, it works for them and it didn't work for them. No, that's not the way it works.
No, it works every time. Every
single time. I say all the time, the fire is going to do what the fire does, and you don't have to worry about being disappointed because it's going to work. So if a corporation has an event of any kind, I don't care what it is. Maybe the company's doing really well and they want to take it to the next level. Maybe they're doing really bad and they need a lot of help. Maybe there's a lot of dissension going on. They need help. Maybe they're launching a new product. It doesn't matter. Because when a client comes to me, I design the firewalk around them, around what's going on, around the new product, whatever that is. So because there's no wrong way to do it, again, we can custom design it.
That's incredible. And I can see how it became kind of a no-brainer for you to take what you were doing with the, personal development with these individuals and to be able to really amplify that and bring it to the corporate world to help people level up individually within their teams, but company-wide. Walk us through work that you did with a particular client. You don't have to name names if you don't want to. If you want to name names, sure. Just explain when they came to you, what were some of the challenges they were contending with? And what was that outcome after they did the firewalk? When you went back to them, did they say they'd seen improvements?
One client we did the firewalk. They had 350 of their sales and marketing people, and we did it in Palm Springs. And their sales went up 18%.
That's ridiculous.
Within 3 months of the firewalk. Now, was that all the firewalk? I don't know. All we heard was their sales went through the roof. But again, there's a connection. Like, look at what's going on now, right? So in March of 2020, we all know what happened. Everybody got pulled and ripped apart. The mask wearers, the non-mask wearers, the vaccines, the non-vaccines, the political system. I love Donald Trump. I hate Donald Trump. I mean, oh my God. Everybody got ripped apart. Families, companies. Well, any CEO is going to know that if he or she doesn't fix that in their company, guess what's going to happen? Production goes eep. So how do you fix that? Well, they hire me. We come in for 3 or 4 hours and we fix it. And we bring them back together, just like that second day when I came in. We were all there, 3,500 of us. There we are, and we're connected at a level that's unlike anything else. So the fire will fix that. Now, I do some other things too, Lori. One of the things I do, I take it to another level. Tony did it to a certain level. I took it higher. And one of the things I brought in is the board break experience. It's a martial arts move. And so they all get a board, and then I have them write something on front of the board that they want to move towards. I have them write something on the back of the board that they need to move away from.
Love it.
And then I have them write anybody's name on the board that they're in conflict with. I don't care what's going on. If they did you wrong, you did them wrong. It doesn't matter to me. There's no logical reason to carry around resentment. It ends tonight. Mm-hmm. And then to turn it into a rite of passage, I have them write anybody's name on the board from an ancestral standpoint that they've lost. Mm-hmm. We take them through the process. They break the board. We take them outside. They do the firewalk. They come back around. They throw the board in the fire.
Love it. I like that 360 loop. I love it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It adds a whole nother dynamic to the firewalk because now we're causing them to think about where they should be going, what they should not be doing, anybody in their life that they need to, restitution and reconciliation with. and then, inviting anybody to the party that would bring them love and connection that they've lost, right? So it makes it very ceremonial.
In my book, the happiness factor, we talk about what are the 10 things that people need at work that makes them want to show up and thrive, not just show up and occupy space, right? And it sounds like that full cycle, the board, the firewalk, and then throwing that ceremony itself it feeds so many of those needs. Ultimately, it feeds that need for connection. It feeds that work-life balance. Because if they're happier outside of life, if they've released that resentment, if they've released all that yuckiness, then they're going to be showing up differently at work, right? So it really, really impressive. And I like the way that it facilitates the connection and it fuels connection by having this shared experience, this collective shared experience where you're pushing yourself to the limit, which normally we kind of do. Not everybody does to the same level. For me, this is this lifestyle change. For you, just starting to walk every day might be pushing yourself enough, right? So what that limit is, I don't think everyone recognizes what we're truly capable of. And
Right.
So to have them go through this really, really beyond your comfort zone experience, I can see how it must just mend a team and mend so many other issues that employers and companies contend with regularly with their people.
Well, and then there's one more thing that I do just to take it over the top. So after they firewalk, I put them in a circle.
Mhm.
And I have them, I'm like, all right, I want you to look and find somebody, make eye contact with somebody that you don't know as well as somebody else. Try to find somebody you don't know. Then once you've made eye contact, hold the eye contact. And then once I get everybody connected, now I'll say, now go over to that person. And when they're standing about 2 feet apart from each other, I take them through what I call the heart hug. And so instead of hugging the normal way that we do, I have them go the other way. And the reason I do that is now their heart is on top of each other's heart. And I have them close their eyes and I have them take 3 deep diaphragmatic cleansing breaths. And as they're coming into or coming out of breath 2, guess what happens? Their hearts calibrate. So they start beating at the same time. So I'll have them go through that, I don't know, 3, 4, 5. I mean, I've done it like 6 or 7 times. I kind of gauge the group and I see, I can watch, I just watch it. It's so beautiful, so magical. Because when you're holding and you're hugging somebody and your hearts start beating at the same time, your heart takes over. Your brain's like, okay, I'm just up here, I'll just be up here until the heart gets done, literally. And so it's really, really powerful. So it connects a team together as well. And it really, really, really takes it over the top.
I like that beating in unison, like that this whole cohesiveness that you're able to facilitate.
That's what tribal is. And we don't do that in the West. It's like, oh, that's poo-poo this. Yeah, okay, you want to bet? No. So, people have to be open to it. They have to trust the process. And they really, really, really have to trust the fire. And the other thing that I encourage them to do is like, look, this is a big deal. The Indo-Europeans, when they did their firewalks, the men that went to battle, when the warriors were going to battle, they did a firewalk the night before. And if you didn't do the firewalk, you weren't allowed to go to battle and you would basically dishonor your family. They used firewalking to see if you were lying. The National Geographic a couple of years ago, I think it was in 2018, as I remember, there was a firewalk in Portugal. And they went over there and they got permission to film it. And they also got permission to put on heart monitors. And this was a ceremonial firewalk. It was not a Tony Robbins style, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Like I'm up here in the mountains of North Carolina, on the Appalachian Mountains, and the Cherokee Indians were up here. Well, they firewalked up here. And, it was ceremonial. They did it for survival. Mm-hmm. So when they put the heart monitors on the folks in Portugal, they noticed as soon as the firewalk started, all the heart monitors, everybody's heart started to calibrate and started beating at the same time. So, but again, Lori, I don't know. I don't, there's stuff going on. It's like, how'd they build the pyramids? Well, nobody knows that, right? Yeah. But there they are.
But right? I think there's value in just not questioning it. Just
absolutely
how powerful it can be, and then just following that universal lead. Like, just go follow the universe's lead and just do it, right? It's really interesting to understand, number one, what it is, because I wasn't really sure. I've seen them maybe on some movies and stuff, but nothing crazy, not in depth like you just described it. That's pretty.
Right. So this is a container of the calls in here, and then we just put something on the front. The client can put their corporate name. I firewalk with XYZ company in 2023, and then you can give one of these to all your participants, and then they'll have this forever, and they can. It's so funny. This thing's worth, I don't know, $5, $6, whatever it is. But it's like giving them a Lamborghini, for God's sakes. They love this. And so they can set this on their desk. They can set this on their credenza or whatever. And then if they've got it there as an anchor.
$6 monetary.
Yeah, right?
What does it represent, though? What does it represent? It represents you kind of just going past your limits, you really pushing yourself to the extreme, you pivoting and understanding you're leaving stuff behind and being okay with that and burning it as you go. Like I think that I can see why they appreciate it that much. I can only imagine if I had actually accomplished that, I'd want some of those coals with me. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's cool. And we do a lot of kids. I'm a sucker for kids. Let me show a 7-year-old how to break a board with their bare hands. And I get asked all the time, well, can my kids walk? Absolutely. Because the kids don't have the limiting beliefs that mom and dad and the old folks do. My daughter was 6 years old first time she walked. My son was 9 years old. And they both walked with Tony and I in New York. And when you do that to a kid, you talk about self-worth, you talk about self-belief.
Skyrocketing their self-confidence.
Oh
my God, that'll carry them through their teenage years. I think you'd almost want to have it done when they're like tween, so that it carries them throughout their teenage years.
It's powerful. It's very, very powerful.
So I have to ask a silly question, though.
Sure.
Why don't our feet burn?
I don't know.
Oh,
I mean, I've got my own hallucination, and I'm happy to share it. When you're in a peak state, think MMA fighter, think Super Bowl, think about the mental preparation as they get ready to go out onto the field or go into the ring. If you took a camera, I think it's called a Carillion camera, it takes pictures of energy and heat, and you can take pictures of your hands and your feet. You have a tremendous amount of energy coming out of both your hands and your feet. Now, whether that energy can push off on the other energy of the coals, I don't know. And again, I'm not ever going to pretend that I know the answer. You're not on the coals all that long. So you're walking what I say, you're walking with purpose. You're not lollygagging. You're not running, though. I tell them very specifically, do not run. Because if you fall, we got a problem. So just walk normal, walk with purpose, trust the process, get yourself in a peak state, right? So you've got, your fight or flight. Your body knows what to do. It knows how to protect itself. And that's what it does. Now, can you get a burn? The coals are 1,000 degrees. What's the answer? Of course you can. Are you going to need hospitalization? No. Are you going to get a little kiss, maybe a little blister on the bottom that probably the next day is going to be gone? Yep. That's about the worst case scenario.
That was the way you were just describing those, walk with purpose, trust the process. I feel like that's really wise business advice as well for any team and for employers. So it translates right in the real world. The lessons learned through that exercise translates to that every day. Amazing.
And again, a CEO, a business owner, entrepreneur, they have the daunting task of keeping their people motivated, keeping them inspired. How do you create a golden handcuff? You've got to show, if you're at the top from a leadership standpoint, what do you got to show them? That you can lead.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that means, stepping back into them and let them go forward with you at the same time.
Absolutely.
And so when I do a firewalk for a company and there's a CEO involved or leadership involved, who goes first? They do, always. And so, that they don't forget that. And it takes guts for a CEO to come do this because he or she's going to have all those limiting beliefs. Oh my gosh, people are going to get burnt. They're going to go to the hospital. We're going to get sued. Yeah. Nope. Doesn't happen. Never been sued. I've walked to 500,000 people. No one's gone to the hospital. So we're either really good at this or we're really lucky, one or the other. 3 decades of doing this.
Yeah.
No, it's a beautiful experience. It's that. And that's what you should prepare for.
Absolutely.
You should prepare for one of the top 10 experiences of your life, because most of the time it is.
Absolutely. You talked about your theory as to why it doesn't burn, and what I heard from that is, and I agree with your theory, by the way, I think it is kind of an energetic dynamic happening that makes it that you're not burning. But what you did talk about was peak, when you're at that peak level.
Yes.
So firewalks accelerate peak performance.
100%.
Right? You get them to that peak and they start to understand what peak feels like, and recognize that maybe for a long time now, they've actually been running at subpar.
Yes.
And for them to finally step into that peak feeling, it'll make them want to get it more often, ultimately.
So you just nailed it, Lori. 100% just nailed it. Because most people have no idea what it's like to perform at a professional athlete's level or an Olympian. They've never gone there. They've never been there. They have no idea what it's like to train. They have no idea what it's like before you actually go into the game. Or you think about an MMA fighter, right? You go see those guys and you see them coming out. They got their entourage. They got their thing. They got they're dressing right. They're sweating like crazy.
They're in the zone.
They are in the zone big time. They're not lollygagging when they walk out there, right? They don't walk out there going, okay, I'm going out there. I'm going to go kick his ass now. Right? Yeah. No, that's not what they do. So everyday people get a taste of what it's like to play at the professional athlete level. And that's exactly what a firewalk will do for them.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you. This was so interesting and so entertaining. If you had one tip or a nugget of wisdom or something you want to offer our listeners that you'd like to leave them with, relevant to what you just talked about.
Yeah, sure. Stop looking for heroes and be one. I believe legacy is everything. I looked at the numbers. I did a study one time and I went back 12 generations. So for you and I to be here right now, what had to happen generationally for you and I? If we go back 12 years, that covers about 400 years. And how many people that are involved is about 4,094 people. So 4,094 people of my ancestry got their you-know-what's kicked so that I could be on your podcast here today. And so for me, I believe I owe homage to that. I believe that I'm the one in the family that's going to rise up. I'll plant one other seed. When I go on stage, a lot of times I put a picture of a guy that I know, a friend of mine. His name is Eric Weinmeyer. And the picture is he's standing at the top of Mount Everest. And so I'll go along, Lori, I'm talking, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. And then I'll stop and I'll say, who here can tell me where Eric is standing? And, there's always somebody that goes, Mount Everest. Yes, that's correct. Now, here's what I want you to know about Eric. He's climbed the 7 highest mountains on 7 continents. Put him on a mountain bike, he will tear it up. Put him in a kayak, he can navigate probably any river in the world. In fact, he just did the gorge and the Grand Canyon, Colorado River. I'll say, and then I come back and I go, but there's something physically wrong with Eric. Who here can tell me what it is? And now the way he's standing on the peak, he looks like one leg's longer than the other. So there does look like there's something physically wrong with his body. And then I come back and I'll tell him, now remember, he just climbed the 7 highest mountains on 7 continents. And here's the bottom line. He's blind. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear your excuses. They're not going to fly with me. It's not true. So if a man can climb the 7 highest mountains on this planet blind, what can you do?
Love it.
Right? You can do whatever you want.
What an inspiring story to end what I can only call a very inspiring episode. Thank you, Dave. If people want to continue to connect or are curious and would like to look into customizing a firewalk for their own companies, how can they connect with you?
Real simple. Just go to our website. It's Firewalk Adventures with an S, firewalkadventures.com. Now, something that some companies are interested in with us is that, some of them just want to hire us. All right, let's sit down. Let's figure out what we want to do. Let's design this firewalk around this new product. And we do all that. Now, I opened up last year the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy. My academy is in October. And so they can send someone, or the CEO can come, or the entrepreneur can come, or if they're a life coach or a trainer or whatever they are, they can come to my academy and I teach them everything. And then I act as their liaison. I help them and support them. And then they can go back into their own company and do it themselves. So that's coming up in October. And as a matter of fact, for all your listeners, if anybody wants to attend the academy, if they give me a code 6828 that tells me that they watched your podcast, I'll give them a substantial discount for being on your show and listening to your podcast here today.
Fabulous. Thank you. That was so generous of you. I love that they can continue to use that once they're trained through the academy. They can use it annually every time they come up with strategic planning and they want to leave 1 year behind and start the new fiscal year fresh and new. I love it, love it, love it. Well, thanks again for being here and for such entertaining stories. And I really do hope that some of my listeners take advantage of your generous offer.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Lloyd.
Thank you.